We can take someone like Conor McGregor. My impression is that his life is much more focused in human animal, in the primal, and that his instinctual desires as a biological male are the things that might win in his life. Yes, maybe he has his religion, he has his girlfriend, he has all of their kids, they are not married yet. He might have sexual partners outside of his partnership, outside of the woman who is the mother of his children, right? This is human animal. And I think, you can take someone like Andrew Tate as well. There's the human animal that wins over the human spirit. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here, and today I want to talk about human sexuality, men and women. I want to continue the conversation about female sexuality that I was having last week, and I want to bring in men and women and so together. And so I have this framework that I want to kind of talk about all of this through. So I'm going to bring that up. But first, I kind of want to answer one thing that was put in the comments around what's missing in the culture of female sexuality. So, gentleman was responding to me saying that, what's different about this modern era is that, in the past, prostitution has always been a thing, of course, but it's always come from a very desperate place, and it's been a woman's survival mechanism, especially if she's destitute and from a low class, and this is something that she must do to survive. Nowadays, it's definitely been glamorized, and you've got, advertisements to college girls talking about, seeking arrangements is what I was talking about last time. This idea of meet a rich man and make some extra money. And it's just upper middle class women are considering effectively prostitution, even though it's been labeled as like this glamorous sex work, right? And he was talking about how, how many societies in the past have included the idea of sex workers in the highest courts of the land, right? Concubines, mistresses, geishas, totally. Um, yes, absolutely, that's true. But what was different in those times and in those experiences in the highest courts of the land, there was no gray area about whether a geisha was going to become a wife or not, right? I'm sure there were instances where that could have occurred, maybe, but generally speaking, there was a real grasp on reality, right? Like, if I'm a concubine, I'm not an empress. If I'm a geisha, I'm not like a wife, right? If I'm a mistress, I'm not a duchess. It's just that was so clear. And there was this incredible movie I remember from the late 90s called Dangerous Beauty. Beautiful film, really lovely, all about the Venetian courtesans of the 17th century, right? And there is the heroine of the story. She fell in love with a man who was from a higher class than her, and she kind of grew up in the neighborhood around his home, and his family would not allow him to marry her because her mother had been a courtesan in the past. And so they did have money, but then her father took all of their money, and they were left without money. And basically her mother was like, you have two choices. You can either go be a nun, or you can become a courtesan. And there was this glamorization of becoming a courtesan because you could travel, you had all of this glitz and glamour, you started to make money, you became like, there was this glamorization of that. And on the flip side, the way that the film depicts wives is in this very Madonna way, right? In that they are just so pure, they are not sexy, they are not sexual, they have zero zest for life. They are just these kind of like mute Madonna like characters, which is what in essence the problem is, right? That's a perfect depiction of the Madonna whore complex, where in the past there's always been this notion that a woman is either a Madonna or she is a whore. She cannot be both. And that's what's really heartbreaking for women, right? Because both of these women want to be the other. The courtesan wants love and partnership, and the wife wants to be sexually experiencing her life. She wants her sexuality. She wants to be in her power in that way. She wants to be desired by her husband, right? So that in essence is has always been this big problem. And yeah, but in response to that, like that's the difference, right? A woman who's doing sex work right now has still in her mind this notion of like, I want to be in love. Like, why shouldn't men consider me as marriage material, right? That's the thing. That's what women are bought into right now. And a geisha would never make that mistake, right? She knows. She knows where she's at and she knows where she's not at. And so I think that's one of the big differences about what's happening here. And I think perfect segue to what I want to talk about today. It's really coming from this lack of understanding about the realities of male and female sexuality, and biology in general. There's just like a real lack of understanding here. And one of the ways that I've really been thinking about male and female sexuality versus male and female partnership, right? These two things are different. And we got to talk about those differences. And there are some really great examples out in culture of those differences. So, Alison Armstrong, I love her. I always talk about her. She had this concept in one of her books that I kind of grasped onto a few years ago, this idea of, human animal versus human spirit, right? And what's the difference? We all have this duality inside of us. This is the framework, right? And then I had expanded upon it. We all have this framework. We all have this duality inside of us. And human animal is focused really on two things, right? Human animals focused on survival, focused on procreation, right? We're eating, we're making sure we're eating, we're making sure we stay alive, we're making sure we have sex. We want to have sex. This is the human animal. This is really important, right? We want to procreate, right? We want to have sex to procreate. And the human spirit, of course, is something that is more connected to a higher power. The human spirit is the thing that wants love and connection. It's the thing that says like, well, you know, I'm being myself, but that person's not calling me back or they're pulling away from me. Um, Great, right? Great clarity. Awesome. Good riddance. May they find the person that really does work for them. That leaves me room to then find someone that actually gets me or is actually a good fit for me. That's human spirit kind of coming online and saying, we're not attached. Love is all around. There's abundance everywhere. Um, Love matters. Union with God matters. True union with another is what really matters, is what my soul is searching for. I'm going to let people go that don't that don't see me, where there's misalignment. Whereas human animal, which is actually mostly where we're operating from because of our attachment wounds, because of our childhood stuff, our traumas, our feeling kind of alone in the world, just the thousand years of attachment issues that we've had, as we've kind of left the quick return hunter gatherer lifestyle and started stockpiling resources and then started growing and started having larger communities. And so we feel a little bit, especially now in the modern world, right? We feel very lonely. A lot of us feel very lonely. We don't have a community that is close knit. And with that, we operate a lot more within our human animal, right? And the human animal is all about there's scarcity. I have to win. If I win, they lose. If they lose, I win. Fear is usually what wins. So human animal, instead of saying, "Oh, let them go," like clearly it's not aligned, human animal would have a thought like, "Oh, they're pulling away from me. That means I need to do something to get them back," right? There's scarcity, like that I need to make sure that they like me. I need to maybe hide something about myself so that they like me, right? Um, and it's it's human animal that's mostly operating when it comes to sexuality and um, the way that we go about things in the world. And men and women have such different survival strategies and survival mechanisms and procreation mechanisms, right? Like they're foundationally very different based on our biology. And we know this, and yet we have pretended like there is no difference. And that's what we've been doing for the last 50 years, right? And so I kind of want to get into, I was writing a little bit on my newsletter also this week about what those differences are and just like the foundational aspects of those differences, right? So the idea is we want to spend as much time in human spirit or human soul is what I'm calling it, right? That's where we really feel connected. That's where our creative power comes from. That's where our connection to spirituality comes from. That's where we feel most at ease. That's where we manifest things and we let things come into our lives that are really, really organic and meant for us. But it's hard. It's hard to get there. And especially in our developmental journeys, it's hard to get there because human animal is so loud, right? And especially in the society that we live in, it just makes sense that we've pretended like men and women are not different, yet we've become so secularized, right? If we wanted to pretend that men and women aren't so different, but we became more and more spiritually minded and more religion based, we would be operating more so in our human soul and our human spirit, where love always wins, where connection always wins, where we're not trying to manipulate each other, right? That's not the story. So, what has happened is that not only are we operating mostly in human animal in the modern societies that we live in, but human animal has grown exponentially and human soul has actually gotten smaller, right? And I'll talk about a little bit of what I see with that. So, what does it look like? What is female human animal, right? Female human animal is the one that's focused on survival and procreation, right? She's attracted to cues of protection and provision, and she's super choosy with her mates because, especially, this is all pre-birth control, pre-modern era. I have sex with someone, I might get pregnant. I'm then responsible for this infant, not only for the 9 months of gestation, but for the rest of my life. I want to be with a man who is solid, strong, capable, has a vision, can really, get things done, is mission oriented, is driven, all of these really wonderful things. This is what women are attracted to. This is what women have always been attracted to, right? Whereas men are attracted to signs of fertility. Men are attracted to youth. Men are attracted to warmth, right? Like femininity, all of that stuff. And they're far less choosy about who to mate with, right? Because their biological drive is to propagate the species, to spread the gene pool, to spread their genes, right? To have as many children as possible, to continue the species in that way. And men can do that naturally as often as they like, right? Men can have, if they wanted to, they could create 20 children in one day, right? But a woman could only create one child in the span of 9 months, right? So if she creates a child today, then that's it. That is it for 9 months. And so it's just a completely different biological drive, right? And so generally speaking, there has been in society this like very clear setup around how men and women mate. And generally speaking, we've been monogamous for most of our history. I'm sure there have been definitely societies, especially societies that get richer, uh, that they become polygamous, right? Especially if there's like a warrior class that takes over and there's just like a lot of power being concentrated in just a few families or a few men. Polygamy has been something that has been practiced and is still practiced in some places today. But generally speaking, what has always been best for us, what has always worked, especially in easy return hunter gatherer societies, is monogamy, is pair bonding. Doesn't mean it's like one partner for life, but it is one partner at a time. And so this idea of pair bonding goes hand in hand with like partnership and what's created within that beyond just having sex, right? Beyond just having sex and having a child. There's so much more that's created there. And that kind of gets into human spirit, human soul, right? And so it's almost like it's almost like the differentiation between just acting on animal instincts versus making a choice. And nobody's perfect, right? We're all just trying to figure this out. So sometimes it's not perfect, but the idea is like, how do we move more from human animal to human soul? So I was listening to that popular podcast that came out this past week with Scott Galloway on Diary of a CEO, talking about masculine crisis. This is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. It's something that people that coach men and have been focused on men for the last 10 years have been talking about and thinking about. And so one of the things that he's talked about, which I thought was really important, was this idea that due to where we're at in a capitalist society in the West, we have we have effectively replaced this idea of provision and protection means money. That's just what it has meant in our modern world, right? If you think about tribal societies that did not have currency, right? They had something else. The protection and provision could be showcased as a man through obviously hunting game, through your strength, through your being a warrior, through all of these different things. Today, it's been very clear. It's the way that we had set up society, especially in the last couple of hundred years. It's been really focused on financial provision. And so the last 50 years, women have been saying, oh, we're going to make money now. We're going to be financially providing for ourselves. This has put men out of a job. Now, it might not have put men out of a job if we weren't so focused, if that wasn't what provision and protection meant in our society, right? If it meant something else, if we didn't have currency, if we lived like tribal societies, it might not have made that much of a difference. But because of the way that we have set up society in the West, it has. It put men out of a job. It put men out of a job, the job that is the thing that attracts women to them, right? That's the problem. That's what no one wants to like talk about. Like that's the essence of the problem. Now, if you I had a hunter-gatherer expert woman on a couple months ago, and she talked about how women in easy return hunter-gatherer tribes, they brought plenty of calories back to camp based on their gathering, and men brought the protein calories to camp based on their hunting. This would be the same as if the women just said, hey, we're going to take over the protein calories also, and we're going to hunt all the game, and we're going to gather all the berries, right? It's like, what are they gonna do? Right? Just stand guard and protect. But what's the point? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so for the last 50 years, men have slowly been like, well, okay, now what? Okay, now let me pivot, right? The resourceful men are like, okay, let me figure something else out. Let me try different things. Let me focus on the gym. Let me focus on other things. And so it's confusing. It doesn't make sense. It hasn't been working because it's of this foundational thing that we have done in society. Now, the difference between especially people that were living in agrarian societies where women were doing women's work in the home, but they were providing resources and provisions for the household, and the man was doing men's work outside of the home, providing resources and provisions for the household. They were co-creating, working together, kind of a la the hunter-gatherers, whereas women would bring in the vegetarian proteins and men would bring in or women would bring in the berries and the calories based on berries and nuts. Men would bring in the calories based on proteins, and that's how we work together. And that's just one example of a role, right? We have had a crisis in that partnership, right? We've created a crisis over the last 50 years in what men and women are co-creating with. How are they co-creating, right? So in the United States, obviously pre-50s, we had a lot of women home as housewives, right? We had women that were not participating in financial public life. Of course, they were participating in public life in so many other ways, right? How many volunteer organizations, how many great things and civil things for society did we used to have that we don't have anymore because women have moved from participating in those things into financial, like financial provision, right? So now what, right? That's the big question. So now what do we do? Do we change what protection and provision has meant, right? Let's separate protection and provision. Okay, I think protection is something that it's unrelated to finances in the way that I mean it's very simple, right? Like we women want men to go to the gym. Women want men to be strong. Women want it's a very like instinctual kind of biological reaction that if I'm sitting in a room with a man and something happens, something goes, goes out of control, like am I saving lives here or is he saving lives, right? If he's not the one that can protect me, I'm not attracted to him. It's foundational, right? It comes from that like original biological desire, that original biological desire of protection and provision, right? So I think the gym, getting strong, a man focusing on his actual physical strength and his emotional strength, his mental strength, right? Like all of these things are protection. And that's something that we can kind of separate from provision. So what do we do about provision, right? Do we change what provision means? Because we're at a stalemate if we don't change what provision means. Because for the last hundreds and hundreds of years, provision has been related to financial security. I don't think we can change what provision means. So then you go back to human animal foundationally. What does a woman want? She wants protection and provision. So what do? Well, we have to try to move into human spirit, human soul. What does human soul want? What does human spirit want, right? Love, connection, partnership, to be understood, right? And I think that's where we can come together, right? I think this is a really difficult conversation. And I think why we see so many people stuck in human animal is because there's like this big lack of understanding. And so I feel like I'm spinning a little bit, but that's okay. I have a couple of examples kind of in my mind where a person that is operating with the opposite sex from human soul is someone that looks like, I think Nick Freitas is a really great example. He's the former vet, Christian man, also in politics in Virginia, I think. He does the mug thing. He's the guy that has the like funny sayings on his Instagram with the mug at the end. Um, Father, husband, right? Been with one woman his whole life, has been God-centered since he was a teenager. I this feels to me like a man who has kind of overcome human animal in many ways, in that he has made a decision that partnership and union, both with God and with his wife, are of paramount importance to him, and that's what he's going to focus on, and his spirituality kind of drives him. I think it's really beautiful. Does he have still human animal in him where he's attracted to people that are not his wife? Absolutely, right? It's like the two wolves story, right? The human spirit is what wins in his world, and I think that's really beautiful. I think that's where we all kind of want to get to. We all want to be loved, we all want to be seen, we all want partnership. Now, in comparison, we can take someone like Conor McGregor. Nothing really negative to say about him. I think he's hilarious and, a very strong warrior of our times, right? But this is somebody that is operating. I think both of these men are warriors, right? But Conor McGregor is someone that I don't have any sort of fact checking that I can do here, right? This is just my impression, right? And that's fine. We all can have our impressions. My impression is that his his life is much more focused in human animal, in the primal, and that his instinctual desires as a biological male are the things that might win in his life. Yes, maybe he has his religion, but he has his girlfriend, he has all of their kids, they are not married yet. I am under the impression that he might um have sexual partners outside of his partnership, outside of the woman who is the mother of his children, right? This is human animal. Now, there's no shaming or blaming this person at where he's at in life. And this is how he wants to live. And this is what's important to him. This is how he sees the world, right? That's just the reality. And that's okay. And I think, you can take someone like Andrew Tate as well. There's the human animal that wins over the human spirit. And I think that's just the reality. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, I imagine that was always true. There were always there's always that dichotomy, right? And if you take that framework and you apply it to dating apps, for example, right? The foundational, like the data that we get from all of these dating apps, women are going on these dating apps, they're matching, they're liking like the top 10% of men. The bottom 90% of men are being left out. These women are going on dates, maybe they're sleeping with these men, and they think for some reason that by doing so they're in the running to become this man's partner, to become this man's wife, and they're not. These men are operating at human animal. They're happy to sleep with all of these women that want to sleep with them because they're the tallest, fittest, most successful, most wealthy men on those apps, right? And that's where female sexuality is so confused and so conflating, in that with the kind of prostitution light and with this kind of glamorization of sex work and with this kind of allowance of casual sex, women are screwing themselves over because of this misunderstanding of male human animal. Like, these men that have sex with these women don't want to marry them. They don't want to be with them. That's it. That's all it is, right? This is not a human spirit centered behavior. Human spirit centered behavior is something else. It's making a decision that I want a family, I want partnership, I want union with God and my partner, and I'm done with the casual things, right? That's a decision that for a long part of history, men have at a certain point made, and that's it, right? That's the decision they made. Women were like available for that, looking for that. More men in society were of the quality that women were looking for, right? Because we weren't demeaning men back in the day. We weren't kind of talking about the future as female. There was this clear understanding that if women want protection and provision, men need the opportunity to protect and provide and to be the best they can be at that. And then for women's perspective too, there is this really clear opportunity to differentiate. Like, this is something that I know is a difficult thing, and no one teaches teenage girls this, no one tells teenage girls this, but especially this comes from, I think, lack of dad in their lives, or lack of presence of dad, or dad not kind of showing them that they are good as they are lovable, they are worthy. I've talked about this so much. When that's not there, sometimes girls are like, well, I want to be loved. I want to be loved. I want to be loved. How can I be loved? Well, maybe if I look really pretty, maybe if I look good, and I'm sweet, and I'm just like I'm beautiful and all these things. And yes, but then they feel like, well, okay, now he wants to sleep with me. Oh, that must mean that he likes me, right? Because he's saying all these great things. Oh, now he's gone. That's the conflated belief system that so many women have, that like, because he thinks I'm pretty, he wants to take care of me and love me. That's not how that works, right? And so we've got so many women that are sleeping with these top 10% guys on these dating apps that deep down really just want to be loved, but they're confused about all of this, the casual sex being okay and all of this stuff. That's not that's not how male spirit operates, right? If you think about human animal, right? For men, right? It's just completely different, right? Someone I'm attracted to, oh great. That means I want to sleep with them. Care and love and devotion and partnership, when we get into the spiritual side, that's a completely different set of qualities and characteristics. And that's what I think men are looking for, those other qualities and characteristics. And then women are, of course, looking for men that are ready to end their Peter Pan era and just say, yes, I'm ready for partnership. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to kind of step into the next phase of my life where I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to let, rule my life with human spirit. But then I think men are like, well, why would I do that if if I'm not seeing the types of qualities that I'm looking for in women out here anyway, right? Femininity, warmth, acceptance, acknowledgement, all of that. And so we're at this stalemate. And so I think that's been an interesting little summary kind of overview of what I see that's going on and kind of trying to weave those two things through this framework. So hopefully that's been great, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Hello, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm so happy to be here bringing my wisdom, my truths, all the research I do into pop culture and evolutionary psych and beyond to bring men and women the information that we all need to know to find that ultimate harmony with each other. This is the mission. This is why I'm here. This is what I believe in. So if you found value in what I'm doing here, please help me grow the podcast. And you can do one of two things. Either share the episode with a friend or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. This will help me so much. Until next time.